Welcome to Microcap Explosions. This is Mariusz Skonieczny. This is video number 2 in the Voxtur video series. Once again, to remind you, Voxtur, ticker symbol VXTR on TSX Venture and VXTRF on OTC markets. So in order for you to understand or appreciate what Voxtur does, you really have to have an understanding of those three businesses: appraisal, a tax assessment business, and title. And even if you are in real estate, you might not have a good understanding of the others, because you might be a real estate agent and you might not understand too much what's going on in the title side or the appraisal side, or you might be an appraiser and you might not understand the title side. I didn't. When I was a real estate appraiser, I didn't really understand what was going on in the title side. So it's pretty common for even real estate professionals to not understand areas in real estate, and it's definitely harder to understand for us as general investors what is going on. Because what Voxtur is doing, Voxtur is using data and technology to make appraisals, tax assessment, and title areas more effective and faster. Let's talk about appraisals first. And this is the area that I am mostly familiar with. And later in the video, I will walk you through what it takes to do a full-blown appraisal so that you can appreciate when I say that Voxtur is making appraisers faster or providing data to make them faster. And it will be providing more data to make them even faster, because this thesis is progressing. But let's start with appraisal. So let's talk about a real estate transaction. You go out and you want to buy a house. You put in the offer, and the offer gets accepted. You obviously are working on to get a mortgage, and then your lender will require an appraisal because the lender wants to have a collateral. If you don't pay your loan back, the lender will take your house, and the lender wants to know the value of the house that the lender is lending on. So that's the primary reason why people need appraisals. Now, you might get an appraisal for a refinance because, again, you're taking out a new loan. The new lender wants to know the value of the appraisal. You might need an appraisal on the house because you're taking an equity line, or you're going through a divorce and you want to pay each other out, or you're fighting real estate taxes and you want them lower, you get an appraisal. So these are some of the examples why you would need an appraisal. Now, there's different types of appraisal reports. You have a full-blown appraisal report, but you might have other appraisals like desktop appraisal or drive-by appraisal. A drive-by appraisal is when an appraiser just drives by your property, doesn't inspect it inside. Or a desktop appraisal, they might not even drive by the property, but do everything online. So different lenders or different products, maybe if it's an equity line, maybe it doesn't need a full-blown appraisal, but it needs an alternative appraisal. You might also have other appraisal products, like, for example, broker's opinion, which is not an appraiser doing, but a broker giving an opinion. That's a different appraisal product. That's an alternative product. So as I said in the prior video, the appraisal industry is experiencing shortage of appraisers. The appraisal work is very time-consuming. And what Voxtur is doing in this space, Voxtur is making appraisers faster and more effective, and in the future it will be providing them data so that they can complete the appraisal work faster. Right now, the main platform that Voxtur is providing to the appraisers is the ANow platform. ANow recently was acquired by Voxtur, and it's kind of like an operating system. It's a system where appraisals can be ordered, delivered to the lender. It even uses Uber system where instead of just assigning the appraisers randomly, depending on where the appraiser is located, he might get certain appraisers based on his location to make it more efficient. So the ANow platform, I'm not going to say too much about it right now, but it's a game changer for the industry. And this is where Some of the major lenders are starting to adopt this platform, and a lot of appraisers are signing up on the platform. Now let's talk about the tax assessment side of the business. You see, real estate taxes are a big expense for a property owner, but they are a big revenue generator for the local governments. So assessors are in charge of valuing properties in a county, in a city, or whatever, and they have to value those properties in a mass. It's a completely different valuation method than just valuing one house. So Voxtur is helping the governmental agencies, the assessors, by providing it with technology and by providing it with data to properly value the real estate in their jurisdictions and properly levy taxes based on those valuations. It is a very, very important job for the local governments. Now, third, title. That's not very well understood subject because this is what's happening behind the scenes. When you purchase a property, not only do you have to get an appraisal to satisfy the lender's requirements, you also cannot close until the title is properly researched and properly transferred from one party to another. So in order for the transaction to close, a lawyer or a title company has to search a public documents, look at the title to make sure that there are no defects on title, no encroachments, no mechanic liens or anything like that, so that the title can be properly given to the new owner. I mean, wouldn't you want a clean title when you're paying $500,000 for a property? You're making the biggest financial decision in your life. Wouldn't you want to make sure that the title that you will be receiving is clean? That's the job of the title company. Now, but even if you properly search for the title, there might be title defects on the title that might come up in the future, and they are not visible by doing the search. So what happens is that the lender will require the owner to protect the lender from any sort of defects that might happen in the future through a title insurance policy. And title insurance policy, unlike other insurance policies, is just a one-time payment. When you get an insurance policy for your health or for your car, you pay like a monthly payment. With the title insurance, you pay like a one-time fee, and it differs from state to state because this is very much controlled by the state. But it's a one-time fee, you pay for it, and it could be $1,000, it could be $1,500, it could be like half a percent depending on the value of the property, or it could be 1% of the value of the property. It really depends on the state, but it's a one-time fee, and it protects there's two types of policies. It's the owner's policy and it's the lender's policy. So the lender's policy, it covers the mortgage provider, and then the owner's policy, it covers you as the owner. And usually they can be obtained as a bundle, and if you get one, the other one is at a huge discount. But that protects the owner and the lender from any title defects. In order to properly search title, to make sure that the title is clean, you also need access to data. You need access to the public documents. And this is exactly what Voxtur comes in, especially with the most recent acquisition of Benutech. If you look at the Benutech's website and what is required for a title search, all the data that Benutech provides is pretty much everything that's needed in title search. So Voxtur is providing the data and technology to make the title work, title search, title whatever, more efficient and effective to speed up the closing time. In the blue sky opportunity, I will talk about a new product that, if successful, it could completely transform and create billions of revenues for Voxtur, and it's going to be the attorney opinion letter. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but Voxtur is in the middle of, it's either already patented or they're patenting it, again, to address another problem, like they addressed the problem with the appraisals. They identify a problem with the title industry, and they are trying to bring an alternative solution to the title insurance. So that's it for the basics of appraisal, tax assessment, and title. Now I will show you how to appraise a house and how to use that information to fill it in to the appraisal form. Hopefully this will give you a better understanding of what Voxtur provides and how it makes a difference to speed up the process. In this video, I want to kind of show you what it takes to appraise a house. Like, as you know, I've been an appraiser in the past, more than 10 years ago, and I appraised residential properties. So in order to understand or have a better appreciation for what Voxtur is doing, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of walk you through, from my memory, what I had to do in order to fill out the form to appraise residential real estate. You'll see all the steps. I mean, at least the ones that I remember. I'm not gonna get it perfect, but it will give you an idea of how time-consuming and labor-intensive it is to fill out such a form. So this is my house, and I'm just gonna kind of walk around and point to you some of the things that appraisers have to do in order to complete the assignment. Okay, so let's go and let's do it. Okay, so let's say I pull around a property like this, right? And I look at it, and it's, you know, two-story house, right? Two-bedroom garage. I would look around, like what kind of neighborhood it's in, right? So here you have a bunch of houses that are very similar to it. Same kind of siding, but different, a little bit different styles. But this kind of house, there's several of them in this subdivision further down. So if I'm looking for, keeping in mind some of the comparables that I want to find, I would definitely, this would be the first subdivision that I would look for. And obviously the ideally would be to find an identical looking house to this. But if I only find like maybe houses like this, then they will require an adjustment. But if I don't find anything here that's sold within like the last 6 months, because you have a limit, then I would go into maybe a neighboring subdivision, which, you know, is not ideal, but you have to look for comparables. Then I would want to find out, walk around and find out, I would want to find out what kind of neighborhood it's in. So I live in the village at Harrison Creek, okay? That's important for filling out the form. Okay, so going back to the house, I would pay attention to what kind of roof does it have. Asphalt shingles. That's going to be something that will be on the form. As I mentioned before, 2-car garage. How many cars in the driveway? 2 cars will fit in the driveway. Pay attention to gutters. It has gutters. I think it's aluminum gutters, or maybe plastic. No, I think it's aluminum. Okay. You look at the foundation, concrete foundation. Siding, right? Obviously the exterior is siding. You have a deck here. And then as we walk around, here's a basement. Yeah. Definitely pay attention to the kind of windows, double hang windows. So After you walk around the property and maybe the neighborhood, and these things don't have to be in a particular order, but even before or after you look at the property inside, you got to go and you got to measure this thing. Okay, so you literally have to take a measuring, and you have to measure the entire house. Okay, so I would go like this all the way to the end, and then that part here, yeah, I would measure it here, then I would go here all the way to the end, and I would measure this whole thing. Now, of course, there are some tools that you can use to measure it. Like some appraisers have that wheel thing that they go along the property and they measure it, or they might have like some kind of laser equipment that bounces off of something and measures it. I use something like this. It doesn't matter what you use, but you have to measure it. Even if you have a floor plan that the owner gives you, most of the time they don't give you anything because they don't have anything. But even if they did, you can't use that. You can use it to draw your own plan, but you still have to measure it to make sure that what they gave you is correct, because even if they have it from a builder, an addition might have been made, or a garage could have been extended, or whatever. So you have to measure it. So what they do is, they come in, they measure it, and then they have a piece of paper or a graphing paper, and then they draw it. So when Gary was talking about buying Apex, the sketching software, this is what they would do. This is what we did in the past. We manually measured it, then we put it on paper, and then we went back to the office and we redrew it again in Apex. So what Gary is talking about is that what they did with Apex is that you can come in with an iPad, and while you're measuring it, you can draw it on an iPad, and you don't have to redraw it again. And then if you miss a certain portion, then it would right away tell you if you missed it, so you could correct it and not go to the office and realize that you didn't measure the side properly, and it didn't turn out to be like a rectangle or a square. So that's one of the improvements on the sketching side. After I would walk around like this, I would then go inside, and I'm not gonna videotape inside, but I would also take some measurements inside, go look at the basement, see if it's finished, count the number of bathrooms and things like that, whether it has carpet, what kind of walls, drywall, and things like that. So now, let me go ahead and show you how these things show up on the... This is the form that I showed you before. This is the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, and this is what an appraiser has to fill out when appraising a property. And what I forgot to tell you when we were outside is that the appraiser has to take photos, outside photos and also inside photos of the property, in addition to measuring it. When it comes to the sketching, so this would be like an example of what a sketch would look like with the measurements that we're taking on the outside, right? This is the garage. And then from the inside, the appraiser would identify, like, and this is not my house, but it would be like a kitchen, dining room, master bath. This looks like a ranch to me. And then a patio. This would be an example of another sketch. And like I said, even if you have a floor plan that was given to you, you still have to do your own sketch. It doesn't have to be very complicated, but it depends on the appraisal firm that you're working for. Some appraisal firms might be more picky, and they would want you to like even draw the doors, which way they open and things like that. But most of them would more likely look like this, and this is what they would use. They would use Apex to do that. So anyway, the sketch is part of the process. Let's go back to the form. So this is the form, and as you can see, this is what it looks like when it's filled out. So it has all these things filled out, and this is what it looks like when it's empty. So just here you would type in the property address, city, state, zip code. Yeah, obviously here it would be the name of the person, right? Owner, blah blah blah. Legal description. So this most likely would be provided to you from like a title company or something like that. Here you have the assessor's parcel number, like a PIN number. So, hopefully they would provide it to you and you would type it in, but sometimes they don't, and you have to look it up. So you have to either look up on the assessor's website, type in the address, and look for the parcel number. Now, the address could be wrong, and it might be difficult to get this. So you might have to call the assessor to get this number. So time consuming. Then you would have a tax year and then taxes. And you'd have to go to the assessor's website or call the assessor and get the taxes, because you don't just want to get it from the owner, because they might not tell you the truth. You have to confirm these. Here's the neighborhood name. So remember when we were walking by, I showed you neighborhood or subdivision or whatever. I'm going to skip this here. Occupant, well, you would say owner occupied. Property rights appraised. Most of the time it would be a fee simple. So you would check it. Assignment type, well, purchase transaction, if it was a sale, or a refinance transaction, or any other one. Here you would put the client's name, the address. So that would be like the bank. And here is a question whether this is, if it's for sale or not. And then if it was for sale, then here you would put the contract price that it's under, the date of the contract. Is the property seller the owner of public record? Well, hopefully it would be yes. And then right here, you would describe the characteristics of the neighborhood. So in my case, it would be like a suburban, right? It's not rural and it's not urban. Yeah, most likely maybe over 75 build up. What kind of growth? Most likely would be stable. Property values, when I appraised, they were always, because that was before the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, so we would always have to put increasing, but now you probably see it stable, where in reality it might be increasing. Then you talk about supply and demand, probably in balance. Marketing time, usually under 3 months or 3 to 6 months. Yeah, you would here describe the neighborhood, what kind of market conditions. Here you would type in the dimensions. So this is like the lot area. So hopefully you can get it from the assessor or the plat of survey. This would be, how much it is in square footage, whatever, what kind of shape, rectangular or regular, blah, blah, blah. And then here you have zoning. So you have to look up the zoning. So that you most likely have to look it up on the city's website. If they don't have a good website, you might have to call them, give the address, and then they give you zoning. And then whether the zoning is legal, so boom, legal. Then here, electricity, all the utilities, right? And then remember when we were walking around, whether it's like a full basement or crawl space, partial basement, concrete slab, foundation, what kind of walls, right? So let me now go back to the sample report, okay, where all of this is filled out. So see, here's the lender. So this is all typed in manually most of the time, and it really will depend on the appraisal firm. If the appraisal firm is more technologically advanced, that they might have some kind of things that help them with this. But most of the appraisal firms are run by 2-3 guys, and they don't have the money for the newest technology. So most likely they have to do it all by hand, okay? And this is time consuming. So when you have a company like Voxtur that is working on populating this report, so if you get an assignment, you already know the address, right? So this property, if you have access to the property's information, and if you have access to the assessors, and if you have all this data, some of it or a lot of it can be populated. So the appraiser can have this form populated 90% and before they even inspect, and so that saves them time. And then if they have this all populated, then they can spend the time to make sure that this is correct and make the adjustments. And what I mean by adjustments is that after you describe the property, like right here, for example, foundation walls, concrete, right? Exterior walls, brick, vinyl, roof surface. Here it's fiberglass, but the normal is asphalt, right? Remember how we were talking about gutters, aluminum, window type, double hang. So yeah, and then interior. Here, this is when the appraiser inspects. Does the property have carpet or hardwood? What kind of walls? Drywall, trim and finish, wood, paint, bath floor. I remember that, bath floor, vinyl. Driveway, right? Remember I was talking about 2-car garage and the driveway. A driveway surface, asphalt. So you have to fill this all out. Appliances, refrigerator, range, dishwasher. So the appraiser has to pay attention to these things. And finished area, how many rooms it has, how many bedrooms, how many baths, and then what is the total square footage of gross living area. So this is why you measure this thing. And then the most important part of the appraisal report is the sales comparison approach. You see, there's 3 methods of appraising, 3 appraisal methods. Sales comparison approach, where you compare something to other properties. And there's a cost approach, how much it would cost it minus the depreciation over the years, or obsolescence, whatever. And then you have income approach. But for residential properties, income approach doesn't really apply because they are not used for income. For apartments or office, income is the most important valuation metric. Sales comparison approach is second, and cost is third. But for residential properties, sales comparison approach is number 1. And yes, they use a cost approach, but cost approach is a bunch of BS. Just you pretty much put whatever numbers you need to make sure that they come close to the sales comparison approach. But what sales comparison approach is, you have a subject property, okay? And these are the things for the subject property. So sales price here, obviously, if this is a refinance, which this was, that would be not applicable. But if this was a sale, then you would put a contract price here. And then here you have location, right? So you say that, let's say the subject is average, fee simple, remember this is what we are appraising, site 0.35 acres, it's a residential, what kind of design, this case it's design, ranch, quality of a construction, brick, vinyl. So again, you put all of this thing by hand, it's time consuming. Quality of construction, brick, vinyl, the age, actual age, then condition, right? So you fill all of these things out. And then you have to find comparable sales. You have to have a minimum of 3 comparable sales, but usually they want more. So then there's, I don't have another page here. Oh yeah, here it is. You have comparable 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. Okay, so but these are the most important ones. So you want to include the most comparable ones first. And where do you get those from? Well, as you can see, they got this from MLS. So they search MLS for comparable properties. And And then once they find it, then they get information on that property from MLS. So they have to, it's like each property has its own page, right? So then they say, okay, this one sold for 171, and these are sales. And then you have to type in the same description for these things. So this was the date of sale, right? And then how does this location compare to the subject? Well, it's average. It's also fee simple. The size of the lot is similar. It's also residential. It's also ranch, so good. But it has a different quality of construction, right? This one has vinyl siding, and brick is better. So what they do here is they make an adjustment because they have to bring this up to equal to the subject. So they make a $2,500 upward adjustment. Here the actual age is 29. In this case, they didn't make an adjustment. Maybe they should have, but they didn't. And this is at the discretion of the appraiser. This is what the appraiser, it's their decision. Gross living area, this one is a little bit smaller, so they decided to make an upward adjustment. This one has a basement, full basement. The comparable has a slab, so they made a much bigger adjustment, $7,500. Rooms below grade, this one doesn't have any because it doesn't have a basement, so another upward adjustment of $5,000. Then this is comparable. The subject property doesn't have a porch or deck, but the comparable does, so then they have to make a downward adjustment. And this is their decision, how much they do this for. Fence, this one has a fence. This one have pool, okay? So this one doesn't have a pool, so they make a downward adjustment. And then after they made all these adjustments, then this one has to be adjusted by 10,800. So you take 171 plus this, and it gives you this value. Okay, then you go to sales comparable number 2, and you do the same. It's located this much away from the subject. This was the price. Information was from MLS, and you go through the same thing. You make certain adjustments, and then the same thing you do for number 3, and you make those adjustments. Then after taking all of these comparable sales into account, the appraiser comes to the value of, in this case, 185. It says here indicated by sales comparison approach 185, cost approach 197,405, but all approaches to value was considered. The market data approach was given the most weight, meaning the sales comparable approach was given the most weight and relied on in estimating the fair value. The cost approach lends additional support. Income approach does not apply as the area is typically owner occupied. And then the other important part is the cost approach. This is what I said, that it's a bunch of BS, but you still have to go through it. And Marshall and Swift is like the provider for this information. So you measured it, right? And then they give you these numbers, and then you go through it, blah, 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 and then it gives you a cost. So to fill out this form, as you can see, this is time consuming. But now if a company like Voxtur can use the information and populate the property description, neighborhood characteristics, and most importantly, if they can already give you comparables, and you just have to look at the comparables and make proper adjustments, that saves you a lot of time. The same thing with the cost approach. Something like this can definitely be automated because it can be connected with a Marshall and Swift, and everything can be, sped up and done by software. So I hope this gives you a better idea of what Voxtur is doing, trying to do, and how it can save appraisers time. Now, I'm not saying that everything can be completely automated and everything can be perfect, but it can save significant time so that the appraiser can focus on the most important parts. And let's say if one sale doesn't work out, with a click of a button, he can throw away one sale without manually deleting these individual boxes, can choose a different comparable, and a lot of this data can be imported automatically. I hope that this was helpful for you to understand the basics of the business, what it takes to appraise a house, what kind of information goes into the appraisal form, and hopefully you have a greater appreciation and for what Voxtur does, and it, hopefully it makes you understand the thesis a little bit better. In the next video, I will talk about the merger and acquisition thesis and strategy, because that, let's face it, that's exactly what Voxtur is doing. Voxtur is putting a company together through those acquisitions, and as they are one by one being added, I will show you how they fit into the big picture and how they help solve certain problems or even improve certain products and make the whole company have more moat and more competitive advantage for the future.